drama up next live in Jerez. It's time for MotoGP. There's nothing quite like the Circuito de Jerez Ángel Nieto when it is packed to the rafters, just as it is right now on Sprint Saturday. What a contest we have over 12 laps coming up shortly with Fabio Quartararo on pole position. What a story that was in an epic Q2 battle this morning. It's short, it's compact, just 4.4 kilometres in length is this Jerez circuit. Plenty of areas to catch you out there. We saw a lot of crashes this morning, particularly in turn 4 and in turn 6. And will there be more drama in that Lorenzo corner, turn 13, at the end of our 12-lap sprint coming up next. Overtaking hot spots, plenty of them, turns 1, turn 6, turn 9 and 13. This was the epic showdown 1 year ago in the Grand Prix. Marc Marquez versus Pecco Bagnaia through turn 9. What a race that was. So under the lights of the Losail International Circuit in Qatar, just under 2 weeks ago, was Marc Marquez who returned to winning ways after an early scare contact from brother Alex in the first corner in Doha. Frankie Morbidelli then led the way before there was a big contact between Alex Marquez and Fabio Di Gianantonio. Maverick Vinales was a surprise leader on the Red Bull KTM Tech 3 machine before he yielded late on to Marc Marquez, who took his third Grand Prix success in the opening 4 rounds. Maverick Vinales took the checkered flag second, but dropped back down to 14th place with a tyre pressure penalty. What a weekend, though, lies in store here in Jerez. What a 12-lap sprint we have coming your way in just under half an hour's time. And then the big one, the main events, the Grand Prix of Spain, over 25 laps here tomorrow in a sun-drenched Andalusia. We have already had spectacular action. We have already had fireworks this morning in a Q2 which was so memorable, so brilliant for the factory Yamaha team and their flying Frenchman Fabio Quartararo, who was quite simply out of this world this morning in that 15-minute second qualifying session. He delivered arguably the lap of his life, did the 26-year-old. He only turned 26 earlier this week. What a belated birthday present it was to Quartararo. And stunning new all-time lap record of 135.610. But Quartararo on pole position for the first time in 63 Grand Prix. His last pole position all the way back at Mandalika in 2022. The first non-Ducati on pole in 9 Grand Prix since Pedro Acosta topped the field in qualifying in Japan. First time Fabio Quartararo has had back-to-back front row starts. Of course, he was on the front row a couple of weeks ago in Qatar. First time Quartararo back-to-back front row since the Sachsenring and Assen nearly 3 years ago in 2022. He's the first Japanese bike to qualify on pole since Marc Marquez led the field away in our opening Grand Prix of 2023. Of course, that day when Marc was on board the Repsol Honda. 1,134 days since Quartararo's last pole position. Well, it was certainly worth the wait, wasn't it? Matt Burton Lewis stood in the commentary box. We've just about caught our breath after that unbelievable, enthralling, exhilarating Q2 this morning. Jack Appleyard, as always, down in pit lane. Lewis, the rider of the day, the rider of the moment. We are still in awe, trying to work out how the hell did Fabio Quartararo break Ducati's domination and stick that factory Yamaha on pole position. Well, we know how. Pure, utter brilliance.
Pure genius from Fabio Quartararo. It was magnifique from the French superstar. A human being doing something quite superhuman earlier on this morning, carrying Yamaha on his back for many years now, hasn't he? Of course, winning a World Championship for them in 2021, very nearly retaining it in 2022, but he hasn't really enjoyed days like this since then. Jerez has been a Very strong circuit for him in the past, it has to be said. That is a 5th MotoGP pole around here for Fabio Quartararo. So if it was going to happen anywhere, you could argue it was going to happen here, but he still rode above himself and that Yamaha to beat a quartet of Ducatis to top qualifying earlier on.
From the back of the grid in 2024, he started the Spanish Grand Prix here 1 year ago, way down in 23rd place, almost needed binoculars to see the lights, didn't he, Quartararo? But he heads the grid here in the 2025 instalment of this wonderful Grand Prix. Such a special atmosphere, such a special place in the hearts of MotoGP fans all around the world. The car parks, the bike parks are jammed. I've been speaking to people in the media centre today. Took them 3 hours to get into the circuit. We left our hotel in downtown Jerez at 6:45 a.m. this morning. Still took us about half an hour. We were queuing on the motorway outside the circuit. Not quite sure what time I'm going to have to set the alarm clocks to get in here tomorrow for what will be a sellout crowd in Spain. As we mentioned, they've already been treated to some fantastic action here in Jerez, with Fabio Quartararo then on pole for the 17th time in his MotoGP career. He just pipped Marc Marquez, the World Championship leader. Marquez beaten in a qualifying session for the first time as a factory Ducati rider. Marquez, though, has not been defeated in all 4 of our sprints so far this season. First in Thailand, first in Argentina, first in Kota, and first last time out in Qatar. He goes from second on the grid. He wasn't exactly convincingly beaten, was he, by Quartararo? Fair play to Marc. Second fastest in qualifying, 1:35.643 from Marquez, just under 400ths away from Quartararo's classy lap.
Shows how good Quartararo's lap was. We were practically handing Marc Marquez the Tissot watch for pole position when he set his first lap of the session, straight down into the 1:35s. In the end, we had 7 riders who broke into the 1:35s this morning and got under the previous all-time lap record, including this man, Marc Marquez. It is such a mouth-watering front row of the grid, isn't it? Quartararo, Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, all MotoGP world champions, starting together on the front row of the grid. The factory Ducati teammates right next to each other. Quartararo looking to produce another giant killing in this afternoon sprint.
Well, after his phenomenal Friday, Alex Marquez crashing at turn 1 yesterday morning, turn 5 very heavily in the afternoon session, still picked himself up to lead the field yesterday. First time in 2025 the BK8 Gresini racing rider finds himself starting off the front row of the grid. Alex fires away from 4th, 17 points in arrears of Marc in the World Championship. Yeah, those fans have been happy pretty much from the moment that Marc Marquez first jumped on the factory Ducati. They are in the mood. They are ready to see their hero, the 32-year-old Spaniard, make it 5 out of 5 in our sprint so far in 2025 to build on that World Championship lead that he's amassed courtesy of 4 sprint wins, 3 Grand Prix victories. And you get a feeling that Marc just wants to banish some of the old demons here in Jerez, of course. Rewind 5 years. It was right here in the Grand Prix of Spain back in 2020 where he suffered those career-threatening right humerus injuries, which really did halt his illustrious career at that stage. Frankie Morbidelli then comes into the, as always, very sprightly into the Pertamina Enduro VR46 racing team garage. Morbidelli in the walls himself this morning. There was a lot of high-profile crashes in FP2. Bagnaia was down heavily at turn 7. Frankie had a real rapid get-off through turn 4. He goes from 5th place on the grid.
Another rider who went down was Pedro Acosta during that free practice 2 session. We can get a word on the KTM rider now with Jack in pit lane.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier on that Acosta only had 1 motorcycle for Q2. The same had to be said for Bagnaia and Morbidelli. The good news for the Italians is that both of those bikes have been repaired and they've got 2 for this one. Acosta, however, only with the 1 bike. Now, we're not expecting any flag-to-flag conditions here. There's not a cloud in the sky. But if there was any kind of technical problem on the grid, on the sighting lap, on the warm-up lap, that could become problematic for Acosta. Just the 1 bike for this Tissot sprint.
Thanks very much for that bang-up-to-date latest information, Jack. Fabio Quartararo just trying to keep himself cool and collected. It's been a long time since he'd have had the sort of pole butterflies, the pole nerves. Just an astonishing lap. A breathtaking lap, wasn't it? We were almost speechless in the commentary box here when we were watching that lap unfold. And as soon as he nailed that picture-perfect last corner, you always felt like he was on course for that 20th career pole position. This should be a stunning sprint, shouldn't it? Let's not forget last year's sprint here in Jerez had a little bit of everything. It was utter chaos. It was bonkers, wasn't it, the sprint here 1 year ago? There were 15 crashes. 9 riders eventually failed to see the checker flag, and there were 5 riders that were hit with tyre pressure penalties. One of them, unfortunately, being poor old Fabio Quartararo, who took full advantage of all the carnage ahead of him, coming through from 23rd to 3rd. The subsequent post-sprint penalty that came his way for 8 seconds pushed Fabio back to 4th place. But yeah, the sprint last year, Lewis, was utterly insane. So yeah, we'd like more of the same, please.
Yes, although we've not got our mail-ordered damp patch to throw some mayhem into the sprint action. No rain to affect the action here. It's just going to be pure action, pure drama, pure entertainment with so many big hitters. As mentioned, it is such a heavyweight front row. Fabio Quartararo, 2021 MotoGP World Champion. Pecco Bagnaia, who won the following 2 MotoGP World Championships, and Marc Marquez, who took 6 of them prior to Quartararo's era at the top. And this was the moment this morning in qualifying after his first run. Quartararo was a little bit cross with his initial effort. He was down on the back of the second row. Boy, did he pull it out of the bag in his second. You already described it as one of the laps of Fabio Quartararo's life, and there have been plenty of special laps over the years, but I don't think any of them have given him quite as much satisfaction as that one.
Just look what it means to him. He's been in the doldrums. Yamaha have slipped from perennial title contenders to almost also rans midfield mediocrity over the last couple of years. But this is the reason you keep plugging away. It's why you keep pounding the miles in the gym and in the hills of Andorra, to make sure that when the time is right, when the opportunities present themselves, you are good to go. Quartararo bringing his A game and some this morning in Q2. One rider to keep a very, very close eye on, just as we did in Qatar a couple of weeks ago, is Maverick Vinales on your screens right now. Now, despite the fact that he had to come through Q1 this morning, Vinales was very confident when he spoke to the media here last night, saying, I'm not that far off the Ducatis. If I can get into Q2 and get a good grid position, I fancy my chances. And you have to say, Lewis, he's kept up his end of the bargain. 6th fastest, 6th place on the grid, which is where he started in Qatar, and that was a great platform for Maverick to fight for the podium. So I think we're all kind of expecting big things again from Top Gun.
Only a quarter of a second off pole position this morning was Maverick Vinales, and he was under the original all-time lap record on that KTM, putting that KTM in a position that none of the other 3 riders within that stable are doing. It has to be said. We've already discussed Pedro Acosta, who's back in 12th place on the grid, 1 place ahead of his teammate Brad Binder, and Air Bastianini's qualifying issues remain. He's back in 18th place, but boy, is Maverick Vinales standing up on that KTM RC16. That's quite a conversation, isn't it? Dani Pedrosa, sprint podium finisher here last season, albeit in slightly unusual circumstances, as he received a signed bronze medal from Fabio Quartararo, sharing some words of wisdom, and there is plenty of wisdom in Dani Pedrosa's mind with Maverick Vinales. 6th position for him, and in many respects, he has nothing to lose this afternoon.
Those two had some great battles back in the day, didn't they? Pedrosa and Vinales. Maverick Vinales coming to the MotoGP World Championship back in 2015 as a raw rookie, which is certainly what we can say about Fermin Aldeguer, who really is starting to warm to life in the MotoGP World Championship. 7th on the grid, his best qualifying so far. Well, MotoGP 25, more playable and immersive than ever. The big launch next week. Of course, if you are a gamer, that is one not to be missed. The new version then of the MotoGP video game out on April the 30th. I might have a little dabble at that myself. Maybe even I can do a 135.610 around Jerez. I'd have to say it might be on beginner mode, but hey.
Yeah, from my experience on MotoGP 24, I will struggle, so we'll see what happens. That new arcade mode, I think, is right up my street. Well, Marc Marquez going from the front row of the grid, although it's the middle of the front row, and usually for Marc Marquez this season. You saw Claudio Domenicali in the Ducati box a moment before we saw Marc, and he was shaking his head earlier on when Marc Marquez did that initial 135.8 right at the start of Q2, which we thought was going to immediately install him as the pole sitter for this Spanish Grand Prix. Fabio Quartararo had other ideas, but no matter the heroics of the 2021 World Champion earlier on this morning, you are hard-pressed to look past this man if you're looking for a sprint favourite this afternoon.
Yeah, all 4 sprints so far in 2025 have had a very familiar theme. They've been won by 93, Marc Marquez, and following him home in 2nd place has been his brother Alex. So are we going to get maybe a slight transformation in the form book. Marc Marquez so far already this year has led 79 race laps, which is more than he led in the whole of 2022, 2023 and 2024. I think it's fair to say that Marquez taken to life in red pretty well, hasn't he? Fabio Quartararo then. This will be a rather unusual feeling for Fabio to come to the grid and see nobody directly ahead of him. In particular, when you think about last year when he was 23rd and P nowhere on the field. Brilliant job last time out in Qatar as well. 7th place in the Qatar Grand Prix. That was his best Grand Prix result in 5 since Sepang. So there has been signs, some shoots of recovery for the Iwata factory of late. We know that behind the scenes Yamaha are working very, very hard on a new V4 engine configuration, which Quartararo himself hopes Yamaha to have got it into a position to race in the hands of a wild card for Augusto Fernandez later on this year. So you got a sense, Lewis, you saw the celebrations from Fabio and inside the Yamaha garage this morning. A result like that, a performance like that, a lap like that from Fabio, it just gives the whole factory, the whole team, such a massive lift.
Some might say, who needs the V4, given that Quartararo has put the inline 4 on pole position. And you imagine that the likes of Marquez and Bagnaia are going to try and attack him hard on the first lap of this sprint. Quartararo was strong in the sprint in Qatar, although he did get beaten up a little bit from that front row start back in Doha a couple of weeks ago. What we have seen from pre-season so far, back in testing, it was noticeable that Yamaha is now a missile off the line. It is every bit as good as the Ducatis and the KTMs off the start line. So Quartararo will fancy himself with that relatively short run down to turn 1 and getting into that first corner first. If he can do that, he will then hope that he and that Yamaha can just do their thing, which is pretty potent combination around this circuit. That Yamaha really is coming into its own around this old school Jerez circuit.
Yeah, and cast your minds back to 2020. Yes, it was 5 years ago when the Yamaha was very much a different beast. Back in those days, Fabio Quartararo destroyed the field in our Jerez doubleheader in 2020. He won both Grand Prix comfortably by well over 4 seconds. So if you give him clear track here in Jerez, well, he is more than capable of putting a number on the field, as he then does come to the front of the grid. Works his way through what is a very busy sprint grid. Probably going to be more hectic tomorrow. Well, he's got the El Diablo logo. He rode like the devil this morning, didn't he? I don't think there is a MotoGP fan anywhere on planet Earth that would not have been enormously impressed by what Fabio did in Q2 this morning. As we mentioned, it just shows, it's the old adage, it's the old cliche. Form is temporary, but class undoubtedly is permanent.
And there is plenty of class in Fabio Quartararo, 2021 world champion, and he's been really riding above that Yamaha for quite some time. Well, that's a wonderful sight to see. Jorge Martin finally on his way back home. Of course, flew home earlier on this morning from Qatar, where he's been for the last week or so. Good to see a smile on the world champion's face, given the way his Qatar Grand Prix weekend ended. I'm sure he's watching this Tissot sprint somewhere. I'm sure he dearly wishes he was a part of this, having winning this sprint last year, but we send the world champion our very best wishes.
Yeah, indeed. Here. Let's go down onto what is a very hot grid then. Both of the factory Ducatis starting alongside each other on that front row. Marc Marquez, world championship leader. Second, Pecco Bagnaia, race winner here for the last 3 years in the Grand Prix in Jerez. Bagnaia goes away from third. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Davide Tardozzi, with Jack.
Davide, I have to say I'm quite excited for this one. Fabio on pole, a big surprise, and I don't think anybody knows what he can bring to the table. And Marc and Pecco lining up side by side. I think we could be in for some fireworks.
Oh, very interesting start of the race, at least. We'll see, because if Fabio has the opportunity to lead the race, he can make his own line. I think that it will be very tough to beat. So I guess that Marc and Pecco need to try to overtake him as soon as possible. But anyway, he shows the competitivity of himself and the bike during all weekend. So we'll see. It will be very tough. But anyway, I think that there are also the second line riders that will be there for the podium.
Pecco said he did some work with the sprint fuel tank yesterday to try and get himself in better shape for today. Confident that that's going to help him be more like himself?
I hope so. I hope so. Since last year we are trying to give him the opportunity to have the same confidence of the Sunday, even the Saturday. So we'll see if this time we solve it or not.
Thanks, Davide. Good luck.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to this 12-lap sprint with a lot of anticipation, a lot of expectation. Just love that shot before we're going through the grid of fans, young and old, enjoying what is always a carnival atmosphere. It feels like a festival of Grand Prix motorcycle racing, doesn't it, this Spanish Grand Prix here in Jerez. Quartararo, Marquez, Bagnaia then is your front row. It's pretty strong. A second row, as Davide Tolozzi alluded to as well. Alex Marquez, Morbidelli and Vinales on that row too. Who should we be looking further down the field at as a potential candidate, Lewis, do you think?
Fermin Aldeguer was very, very strong in the sprint in Qatar. Had that been another lap longer, we might well have seen him on the podium on the Saturday night. So Aldeguer will fancy his chances. He's looked very good throughout the weekend. Aldeguer was only 0.3 of a second off pole position. First of the Aprilias, well, that's Marco Bezzecchi coming from the 4th row in 11th place. Bezzecchi and the Aprilias collectively tend to go better in racing conditions than they do in qualifying, so he'll be hoping to go forward and potentially muscle in on the World Championship points. A field of 23 starts this sprint this afternoon. Good to see Alex Rins set to line up on the grid after his 2 crashes this morning.
Yeah, if you're joining us for the first time this weekend, just some very quick housekeeping. Jorge Martin replaced once again by Aprilia test rider Lorenzo Savadori. Aleix Espargaro makes his factory Honda debut as a wild card here this weekend on a very development RC213V, and continuing to replace the injured Miguel Oliveira is Augusto Fernandez, the Spaniard. Well, he's had a lot more stressful times before a race here, hasn't he, Danny Pedrosa? He looks very chilled on the pit wall there. Now, have they calmed down yet inside that factory Yamaha garage after what was one of the best laps you will ever see in MotoGP? Fabio Quartararo on pole position. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Paolo Bavazio, who joins Jack.
Paolo, what are the emotions like ahead of the sprint?
Yeah, of course, it's an emotional moment. A couple of weeks ago, we were back on the first row, and now we're back to the P1. It's good because it's the result of a hard job, of a fantastic ride from Fabio, and we are really excited to see what the race will bring.
I know you want to keep your feet on the ground, but can you win today?
Dreaming is for free, as I always say. A pole position was maybe a dream, and we got it. Fabio will do his best. Let's see what the race will bring.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, keep on dreaming. Everybody connected to Yamaha, I'm sure Fabio Quartararo is certainly dreaming of what would be just his second ever sprint podium. He's never actually won a sprint, has he, Fabio Quartararo? What a sight that is. I'm sure many of you at home have got a bucket list to tick off as a Grand Prix that you've always thought about attending at some point in the future. Well, if you have, we thoroughly and highly recommend, if you don't mind early starts, that is, getting yourself a ticket one day in the future for the Spanish Grand Prix, because it's an event that from the moment you jump off the plane and walk through the grandstand doors, just sends that tingle down your spine. It's truly a unique spectacle.
Don't rule out this man for potentially getting involved, not just in the battle for the podium, but potentially winning this sprint in Jerez. Alex Marquez goes from the second row of 4th. He's had a couple of crashes this weekend, but he still put himself on that second row. Joining him on the second row is Maverick Vinales. Can he take that Tech 3 KTM in amongst the Ducatis once again? His team manager, Nico Goyon, joins Jack.
Yeah, well, Maverick has confirmed the form, the pace from Qatar by being right up there again this weekend here in Jerez. Excited for what's to come, Nico?
Yeah, no, it's we're quite happy. We to be fair, since Argentina, Maverick has he clicked on the bike, something happened, and he feeling more comfortable in Austin. He was fast as well. He couldn't prove his speed. In Qatar, he showed his speed. Unfortunately, we all know what happened with the tire. So again, here second row, so we are in good position to have a strong result.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, they are in a great position for a strong result. 6 previous sprint podiums for the now 30-year-old Maverick Vinales. His last going all the way back, what now, nearly 11 months to the Dutch TT in Assen. Just look at that, Marc Marquez. That is a face that is just full of focus. It's full of concentration. He will not want to be beaten for the first time on a Saturday afternoon so far in what has already been a record-breaking switch over to the factory Ducati team. There's the We Are 93 grandstand. They are out in their numbers, they are out in full force, and after what they've seen from a distance on their sofas and at home on the TV so far this year, coming to see their hero live up close and personal, well, they are pretty much all here demanding more success from the 32-year-old Spaniard.
Yeah, put a few thousands on the gate, no question about that. The incredible start to 2025 that Marc Marquez has had. So far been undefeated on a Saturday afternoon, although his undefeated record on a Saturday morning was ended earlier on today. Jerez, Fermin Aldeguer heading the third row of the grid. Strong third row with Fabio Antonio and Joan Mir, the leading Honda, right alongside him. As mentioned a moment ago, Aldeguer was strongest in Qatar in the sprint. If that trend continues, then he could potentially move forward.
So Marc Marquez has 5 sprint victories to his name. 4 of them have been collected so far this season in near on perfect conditions, ambient temperatures hovering around the mid-20s, just a little bit of a cooling breeze, not too much to disrupt the riders ahead of this 12-lap sprint. You just feel like we've got all the ingredients here for an absolutely brilliant sprint over 12 laps. It was so dramatic here 1 year ago. I'd like to say, I wish I had my crystal ball and said we're going to get just as much drama. But let's not be too greedy, shall we? No, let's be really greedy and say, yes, we want more of that brilliant action which had us on the edge of our seats from the first corner to the last corner here 1 year ago. Interesting what Davide Tardozzi said about that second row. Alex Marquez, Morbidelli and Vinales. You do feel actually that they have all got the pace to pick a fight for that podium, not just in the sprint this afternoon, but in the full Grand Prix tomorrow.
The 4 Ducatis who are on the front 2 rows have all been pretty closely matched through this weekend, certainly in single lap trim. Frankie Morbidelli is the 4th of them, starting 5th on the grid, of course, with Fabio Quartararo up ahead of those Ducatis on pole position. But Alex Marquez, of course, has been on the podium so far in every sprint we've had so far this season. Frankie Morbidelli not backwards, incoming forwards, is he? So watch out for him.
He certainly isn't. He had a heavy fall this morning at turn 4. Bagnaia was on the deck hard at turn 7 this morning, but he's on the front row of the grid, the Italian, for the first time since our season opener in Thailand. Marc Marquez off pole position for the first time in 2025, looking to make it 5 sprint wins in a row, but for the first time in over 1,100 days. What a story has been today for Fabio Quartararo. What a Saturday it's been for Yamaha as the Frenchman flies away from pole position.